Hi, this is Tom. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about a technique which I call the sensitization technique, which you're not going to find named anywhere else, but it's based on really well-established principles in psychology. And it's something that I've proven out over and over again in my own life through my own kind of experimenting over many years. And this technique you can use to maximize your happiness, your motivation, and your success. So by implementing the principles here, you should see a really good increase in happiness, motivation, and success sustained over time. So we're going to start, let's get straight into it. We're going to start by talking about what do you want from life? What do I mean by this? Well, imagine you're 95 years old. You're on your deathbed, you're surrounded by your loved ones and everything you've accumulated over your life, and you're looking back and thinking about the things in your life that really meant the most to you, the things that brought you the most happiness, the most joy and fulfillment, and that you're glad you did. Things on that list, would be joyous experiences, feelings of happiness, relationships that you built, experiences that you had, success that you had, impact that you had, meaning in your life. And now think back to the things now imagine the things that you wouldn't look back on and think, I wish I had more of those things. So for example, this could be scrolling social media, negative experiences, negative emotions, feelings of, say, envy, jealousy, negative sort of feelings towards the world, emptiness, sadness. Also just cheap thrills. So eating junk food, things that were bad for your health, bad for your mental health, drinking alcohol, taking drugs, whatever that sort of thing is. And then maybe all the stuff that you have. So you impulse bought a whole bunch of nonsense stuff that just clutters your house and doesn't really bring you any joy. So these are things that when you're at the end of your life, you might think back and think, maybe I want less of those things. And there's other things where you look back and think, I want more of those things. So let's look at how you can get more of the things you want, less of the things that aren't going to bring you any long-term meaning to your life. So what's the purpose of this video? What's the purpose of the sensitization technique? It is to bring you more happiness, more fulfillment, more enjoyment in life, more motivation, and to help you achieve goals. So achieving goals like having an impact, building good relationships, having physical health and good mental health, and ultimately achieving success. So that's the purpose of this sensitization technique. So now let's look at the core principles behind the technique. And these are well established in psychological research and have been around for a long time. I'm not telling you anything that's completely new, but these are things that very much I've learned through my own experimentation and then read about them, dived into the literature and found that, yes, many other people have experienced the same thing and it's quite well established. The first thing we're going to talk about is habituation. Another word for this could be desensitization. So this is where you take a stimulus and over time that stimulus becomes less powerful. So that stimulus has an emotional response. So this could be something like you eat some delicious food and the response to eating the delicious food is that you feel a sense of happiness, joy. Wow, that feels good. I like that food. It could be watching a good movie. It could be having a fun hobby. So you go climbing with friends and you get to the top of a climb and you feel buzzed and excited about it. Could be social interactions. You meet somebody new and have a good time with them. It could be that you purchase something new. So you've always wanted this new thing, say a new phone case for your mobile phone. You get that phone case and you're excited. Oh, I've got a new phone case. This is exciting. This is cool. I want to show people. Or you get a new haircut. you get a new item of clothing, you buy, say, even a new car, and you get that kind of satisfaction. So let's first look at a graph of when these stimuli happen too frequently. So let's take a graph. You've got the y-axis. On the y-axis, this is your kind of happiness, enjoyment, pleasure, or excitement. And then on the x-axis, you have time. So you have this baseline level of happiness. And this baseline level of happiness is pretty much kind of constant. Then you get this stimulus. So let's say you purchase something, you get an impulse purchase. And that stimulus leads to a short-term boost in happiness. So this boost increases your happiness, you're excited, I got this new thing. Then that level of happiness gradually returns to baseline. And this return to baseline is called hedonic adaptation. So something exciting happens, you get a boost in happiness, and then you go back to your baseline. This could be the same as getting a pay rise. So you go from earning, say, £20,000 a year to £30,000 a year. That increase gives you this sense of, wow, I've got more money. I'm doing better in my job. But then over time, so over a couple of months, you adapt to that. You have hedonic adaptation, and you return to your baseline level of happiness. This happens with most things, most sort of achievements, successes, and you'll be able to think of many times in your own life where this has happened. Now, let's say you have the stimulus again. So this fun thing, let's say, for example, the easiest example of this is eating delicious food. So let's say I love cookies. So let's say I have a cookie. I get this big boost in excitement and joy, and then I return to my baseline. Let's say an hour later, I have another cookie. I'm going to get another boost. So I get this second boost in joy, and then I return to baseline. Let's say an hour later, I get another boost. But each boost that I get, so the second, third, fourth, fifth boost, as time goes on, those boosts in happiness decrease. So I've become habituated to that stimulus. So it no longer brings me the joy that the first time it happened brought me. So for example, you get a pay rise, you go from 20 to 30,000, and you get this big boost in happiness. Oh, wow, I got so much more money. And then you return to baseline. Then you, say a couple of weeks later, you get another pay rise to 40,000. Wow, I got more money. But this second pay rise is going to bring you less of a boost than the first one. And this goes on. And then by the time you're making, say, £500,000 a year and you get a pay rise, you've had so many pay rises over the course of your life that it doesn't bring you any more happiness. You just think, oh yeah, another pay rise. Okay, whatever. This is called habituation, and the return to baseline is called hedonic adaptation. Now let's do another graph, and let's say you get really infrequent stimuli. So again, we've got happiness on the y-axis, time on the x-axis, and you've got a stimulus. Say I eat a cookie, and I get this big boost in happiness. Now let's say I wait 2 months. I don't have a cookie for 2 months. And during that 2 months, I'm on a strict diet. I'm just eating sort of vegetables, lean foods, not much salt, not much sugar, very little kind of stimulating food. Then 2 months after that, I have another cookie. That cookie, after such a long period, is going to give me another massive boost equal to the first time I had the cookie. And then let's say I wait another 2 months with a bland diet and have another cookie. It's going to give me a massive boost, as opposed to having cookies every couple of hours. So this period is called a refractory period, where it's kind of like a break or a rest from the stimulus, and that kind of resets your sensitivity to that stimulus. So what is the advice here? Well, if you've got a stimulus that brings you happiness, try to build in a refractory period. So a period of rest or break from that stimulus, and give it time for your sensitization to the stimulus that brings you happiness to reset. And this way you will enjoy that even more. And you'll be able to think of experiences in your own life where when you have a break and you take time away from something, it becomes so much more enjoyable. At the minute, I'm really into rock climbing. If I go climbing every day, by the third day, I just don't really feel like it. Whereas if for some reason, I'm busy and I can't go climbing for a week or a week and a half, by the time I get to go climb again, I have so much fun. It's so enjoyable. And this is because there's been a refractory period where I've built up my sensitization and excitement about that event. So try to consciously build in a refractory period. If there's something that brings you joy, try not to just do it all the time because it'll just stop bringing you as much joy. If you can have a break, that will, reset it and make you enjoy it even more. This is kind of the principle between absence makes the heart grow stronger. When you're always around something that brings you joy, it starts to bring you less kind of excitement above baseline. You're still at baseline. But if you have a break, that becomes even more exciting. This is true also of work. So if you're working on some kind of project or revising or trying to achieve a goal, if you're constantly working without breaks, eventually you'll start to lose interest in that thing. But if you can build in breaks and give yourself a bit of a refractory period so that you are excited about working again, you'll benefit from that in terms of being motivated to do the work. Next principle is something called diminishing returns. So again, let's start with a graph. On the y-axis, you've got your boost in happiness. So this is how much a stimuli gives you a boost in happiness. And on the x-axis, you've got time. And the easiest explanation or example for this is, again, eating some delicious food. So let's say you've not eaten for 6 hours and you're feeling kind of hungry. And you sit down and you've got a really delicious meal in front of you, something that you really enjoy. The first bite of that meal is going to be like heaven. You're going to sit there and be like, oh, I've waited 6 hours to eat something. I'm really hungry. This food is so delicious. And it gives you this massive boost in happiness. Then the second bite, again, oh, this is so good. The third bite, yeah, this is still pretty good. But each successive bite of that food, you're getting less of a boost in happiness. And by the time you get down to, the sixth bite, it's kind of boosting your happiness, but not too much. And then let's say you get to, you're almost finished with the meal and you're feeling pretty full. At that point, you're not really getting any extra boost in happiness. You're just at baseline happiness and you're feeling content. Okay, I'm satisfied with this meal. But adding more, and then let's say somebody says, okay, do you want dessert? That dessert is going to have to be so delicious in order to give you an extra boost in happiness, which is why desserts are usually really sugary, really flavorsome. They're cake, they're covered in custard, they're full of sugar, is because by the time you've reached dessert, you're already pretty satiated and you've maxed out your happiness boosts, that it has to be so sweet and delicious to give you any extra boost. So for example, let's say you have a massive meal, you're feeling pretty full, and then someone offers you a dessert of broccoli, you're going to be like, I'm not really that interested. But if it's cheesecake, you're going to be like, okay, I think that will give me, that's intensely delicious enough to give me still a boost. So I'll have that. So this is diminishing returns. As time goes on, you get less and less of a boost from the thing. This is true also of, say, how much work you do in a day. So let's say you're revising for your exam. the first couple of hours, it's quite easy and stimulating and enjoyable to do that. But over time, over more hours of studying, your brain gets tired, you get fatigued, you get less into the work. And so you've been working for 6 hours on revising for this exam in one day. The 6 hour, you're really demotivated, you're feeling fed up, you don't want to do any more work. My advice here is to stop when you're feeling maybe 60% to 80% satiated or full. This is true of eating. This is true of exercising. This is true of your hobby, whether that hobby is playing music, knitting, creating something, painting. This is also true of, watching a movie, playing a game, whatever activity you're doing. If you stop when you feel 60 to 80% satisfied and you leave some more in the tank, when you come back to it the next day, you're going to be even more excited to get going. If you keep going until you're, say, 100% satisfied or full, and you feel sort of uncomfortably full, you don't really want to eat anymore, or you're at the point of being bored of this hobby, you don't really feel like knitting anymore, you don't really feel like rock climbing anymore, you don't really feel like playing guitar anymore, and you come back to the next day, you're not going to be, you're still going to be kind of full and satisfied. You're not really wanting to do that thing. If you leave yourself 60 to 80% satisfied, when you come back to it, you're going to feel raring to go and really excited about it again. So basically the message here is stop when you're 60 or 80% satisfied with the thing, leaving some in the tank. And storytellers or people who are providing entertainment will talk about leaving them wanting more. And this is essentially what you should do with anything that you enjoy doing. Kind of leave a little bit more in the tank. If you're revising for an exam, what you want to do is kind of stop before you feel completely fed up. Stop when you feel like, you're just getting over that hump of being excited and your motivation is kind of starting to wane a little bit. You've done a couple of hours of work. At that point, you can stop and come back to it later when you're feeling refreshed. Okay, the next principle and the final principle is the contrast effect. So what does this mean? This contrast effect basically means that the stimulus or the thing that you're experiencing will be your kind of satisfaction, enjoyment, whatever of that thing is going to be impacted by what you're contrasting it to. So for example, let's say I eat a cookie and I love that cookie. It's 10 out of 10 in terms of taste and enjoyment. Then I eat some broccoli. That broccoli is going to be like 2 out of 10. Not that exciting, bit boring. It's okay, but I'm not excited to eat the broccoli because I'm contrasting it to this perfect, delicious cookie. Now, let's say I've only drank water and I've fasted for the last 24 hours. And that water, when I have some water, it's 2 out of 10 in terms of taste. I'm not that thirsty. But I've not eaten anything and I'm feeling really hungry. I just want some food. And then I have a bowl of broccoli. That broccoli is going to be like 8 out of 10 taste. Oh my gosh, it's going to be delicious. Because I'm contrasting it to this period of not having any food, just having water, so what you contrast things to dramatically changes your experience of them. Another example, which is really important, is, say, scrolling on social media, or you could say watching short videos going on TikTok, just having like crazy stimulation, which is designed specifically to just give you like instant boosts, cheap thrills, and it's like a drug almost. This is kind of 10 out of 10 stimulation. And then let's say you sit down to revise or literally do anything in life. Literally anything, socializing, speaking with people, going outside for a walk, enjoying nature, reading a book, anything you can think of compared with this crazy scrolling, ultra high intensity, cheap thrill stimulation from your phone. So say you sit down to revise, that's going to be like 1 out of 10 stimulation because you're comparing it to this thing that's almost designed like a drug to stimulate your brain. Now, in contrast, let's say you spend an hour hoovering and you're just in your house, hoovering the floors. It's very low, this 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 stimulation. It's really boring. And you've been doing it for an hour, you're really bored. And now you sit down to revise. The revision is going to be like 8 out of 10 stimulating. New information, your brain is working, you're stimulated, you're into it, you're in a flow state. Because you're contrasting this revision to a boring activity like hoovering or just basic housework, the revising is going to be so much more stimulating, as opposed to comparing the revising to scrolling on social media. And you may find, let's say you're revising, you want to take a break, and you say, okay, I've been revising for an hour, I want to take like a 10-minute break just to relax and so on. If you spend during that 10 minutes scrolling on your phone, looking at social media, the stimulation you get from that when you go back to revising, it's going to make the revising so much more boring. In fact, you'll start scrolling on social media and then think, I don't want to do any more revision. It's so boring. I want to stay here and just keep consuming. Whereas if you take a 10-minute break from revising and you just sit in the chair, staring at the ceiling or staring out the window, or you go and grab a coffee and just sit there with no stimulation, sipping the coffee, you're going to actually want to get back to revising. I found this if I'm working and I think, I'm going to take a break and I just stare at the wall. Within about 5-10 minutes, my brain's like, okay, come on, do some more work. That's much more fun than this. So give that a try just as a simple experiment on yourself and see if it works. Don't go on. So you could do the split test. One day, try spending 10 minutes scrolling on social media, come back to work and record a kind of subjective measure of how into it you feel. And then try staring at the wall instead of scrolling on social media, come back to work and record how interested you feel. And see how it differs. A final kind of comparison with this contrast thing is, let's say you're on your phone and you're consuming influencers' lifestyles. So you're looking at these influencers and they're traveling the world, they're eating amazing food, they're in great shape, they're having all this kind of perfect lifestyle. And you look at that and you think, that looks like a 10 out of 10 life satisfaction. And then you reflect on your own life and you have a normal life, your life satisfaction is going to be like 1 out of 10. And they say comparison is the thief of joy or something along those lines. And this is what they're referring to. Now, let's say as an alternative, you sit and you imagine your life without some of the amazing things that you have in it. So you say, this is going to sound pretty morbid, but let's say your loved one has some kind of serious illness. Let's say you're not able to do the things you enjoy doing. Let's say you have a bereavement, somebody died, something awful happened. Let's say you lost your job, you've got no money, you lost your house, you've got nowhere to stay. Let's say you've got all these horrible things happen. And when you imagine this scenario, it gives the impression of 0 out of 10 satisfaction. And this is called negative visualization or premeditatio malorum, which basically translates to premeditation of evils. and it's part of Stoic philosophy. So you imagine this horrible scenario in your own life, and you have 0 out of 10 satisfaction. Now you look at your own life, and your own life looks amazing because you're like, wow, all these bad things are not happening. This is great. So your life satisfaction is 8 or 9 out of 10. This is called gratitude. You're grateful that all these bad things that you imagined are not happening. This is the same as, when you're sick, you've got a nasty cold or the flu, you're in bed and you feel terrible, and you think, oh, wow, I was so ungrateful for how I felt when I was well. I'm going to remember this when I'm well again and be grateful for how good I feel. So by meditating on the kind of possible negative things that could happen, give you so much more gratitude, so much more life satisfaction compared to going on social media, looking at influencers with seemingly perfect lives, curated to look amazing, and then comparing your own life to them. That'll just make you miserable. So let's summarize the principles of this sensitization technique for maximum happiness in your life. The principles are to fast between stimuli. So this is building in a maximum refractory period. So if something's happening, make sure you take a break from that stimuli that gives you a positive experience to kind of reset your sensitivity to that stimulus. The second principle is stop at 60 to 80% satiety or fullness. So stop eating food, stop consuming media, stop playing games, stop working, stop doing the fun thing when you're 60 to 80% satisfied, so that when you come back to it, you feel just as much excitement about it. Don't saturate it to the point where you just, have no more satisfaction from it. Third principle is to remove cheap thrills and remove things from your life that are just giving you negative experiences when contrasting to it. So remove social media, remove junk food, remove things that give you cheap satisfaction that then make everything else in your life less boring. And I think I mentioned this in the last video. Somebody explained the reason why you should never do drugs is because once you do drugs, they give you a cheap thrill, a boost in excitement, and then real life becomes less interesting. So don't do drugs, because then they'll make real life seem less interesting. Next time you go to the movies, instead of just enjoying it, you'll think, wow, the movie would be even better if I was on drugs. And then suddenly you want to take drugs for everything because by contrast, real life is less interesting. If you take away all the cheap thrills, real life becomes so exciting. And the fourth thing is negative visualization, so that you contrast your life with the worst case scenario. That'll give you so much more life satisfaction and gratitude. So if you implement those principles, hopefully they increase your happiness, increase your motivation, increase your enjoyment of life, and bring you more success and the things that you'll value when you get to the end of your life. It's worth mentioning, there's a few downsides to this strategy. And you could kind of call them side effects and things that I find make them difficult to implement. The first one is that they take discipline. It takes discipline not to pick up your phone and go for the cheap thrills. It takes discipline not to eat the junk food. It takes discipline not to compare yourself to somebody whose life seems potentially perfect. It takes discipline to stop when you're 60 to 80% full, rather than having the dessert of cheesecake and keeping eating and eating and eating, or consuming. It takes discipline to stop when you get to that point. And but the discipline is worth doing. And as you practice this discipline, it becomes easier and easier, and then it just becomes a habit and a way of life. So the discipline is hardest at first, but as time goes on, it gets easier. And maybe I should make a whole video about discipline. Let me know in the comments if that's interesting for you. Second thing is, there's a level of kind of uncomfortableness or discomfort to this. This kind of discomfort, I would compare it to being a little bit hungry or a little bit craving something. So this is because you're stopping at 60 to 80% full with whatever thing you're doing. You're building in a refractory period, so you're always kind of wanting a thing. And so it can kind of give you this feeling of never quite sort of full or satisfied. However, the happiness is going to be there, and you're going to enjoy it much more, and you're going to feel motivated. So what's the opposite of this kind of uncomfortable feeling is that feeling you get when you've eaten a massive meal and you're completely full and you're lying there, say on Christmas Day, watching like movies on the TV, and you just think, I don't want to move, I don't want to do anything, I'm just going to lie here and just be a blob. You never reach that point with this strategy because you're always sensitized, you're always getting the most out of life, you're always excited about life, you're always wanting to do the thing. When you consume constantly and you're completely full with all these cheap thrills and junk food and stuff, you don't have that excitement and motivation about life. But that excitement and motivation about life is a little bit uncomfortable. It's a little bit, there's a little bit of hunger there. But I think that's a good thing. And you get used to it and then actually start to enjoy it because you know it makes everything, you're more sensitized to everything. So when you're a little bit hungry and you have some basic food, some broccoli, let's say, it's so exciting and delicious. But in order to experience that, you need a little bit of the hunger. So I hope that video was helpful. If you want to download a kind of nice version of these notes, you can download them on Patreon. There's a link in the description below. And that basically summarizes what we've talked about. So you don't have to rewatch the whole video if you just want to know what we talked about. I hope that video was interesting and helpful. You can very easily experiment on yourself, implementing some of these, even over the short term. And I'll see you in the next video, which will be in about a week's time. Okay, take care. Bye now.